Business owners move through three major stages in their business: startup, growth, and succession or exit. Stage 1, startup. This is the phase where the business owners begin to recognize the opportunity to build something of their own, often driven by their talent, skills, trade, and passion. There is a belief that the path forward is manageable and that with the right effort, they can figure it out as they go. Without a clear starting point, many turn to online search engines, local libraries, and small business development centers to gather information and direction. These resources provide foundational guidance through generic templates and educational materials that can be adapted, but they require a working knowledge of business operations to apply effectively. Access to tailored support is often limited by available resources, staffing, and the need for institutions to manage liability, which can restrict the level of direct, customized guidance provided. From there, the business owner follows the standard requirements established by their Secretary of State to formally register their business and establish foundational documents such as operating agreements or bylaws. They begin building a market presence through a website and basic market materials and move forward with bringing their idea to market. They spend the next several years learning through experience, often navigating costly mistakes as they work to stabilize the business. During this phase, the business is heavily owner-dependent, with the owner driving the majority of revenue and operational output. Hiring is typically reactive, pricing is based on limited or inconsistent data, and messaging evolves over time as the market begins to understand what the business offers and how to engage with it. The startup phase generally spans the first 3 to 5 years and is centered on survival and market validation. The owner is responsible for most functions within the business, often operating with limited systems, processes, and resources. Revenue, staffing, and cash flow tend to fluctuate, making it difficult to consistently reinvest in infrastructure or prepare for the next phase of growth. Approximately 50% of small businesses do not survive beyond 5 years. At this stage, the primary objective is to establish product market fit and achieve revenue stability. Without a clear strategy, many businesses are unable to transition into the next phase of growth. Stage 2, growth. This is the stage where business owners begin to realize the limits of operating the business on their own. As demand increases, they can no longer sustain the same level of personal involvement across all areas of the business. This often results in a sense of depletion across time, energy, and financial resources, alongside a growing desire for stability and long-term security. In response, many business owners focus on increasing revenue as the primary path to stabilization. There is a belief that more customers will lead to more revenue, and that increased revenue will resolve the underlying challenges within the business. This leads to seeking external support, most often beginning with marketing efforts to generate leads and attract new customers. As these efforts expand, business owners invest in marketing services, technology, and additional personnel to manage growing demand. While these actions are intended to create opportunity, they are often implemented without the structural foundation required to support sustained growth. Resources are directed towards short-term solutions, while the underlying need for structural development remains unaddressed. This stage generally spans years 3 through 10 and is centered on scaling operations and increasing revenue. During this time, the business owner continues to expand the team and the operational capacity, often stretching personal bandwidth even further. Systems and processes are introduced as needed, but are frequently undocumented or inconsistently applied, contributing to increased operational complexity. While many businesses experience revenue growth during this phase, structure often lags behind, creating inefficiencies, operational bottlenecks, and continued owner dependency. This is where the structural development gap begins to emerge, highlighting the need for intentional design and alignment across the business. The Hidden Enterprise Value Framework is designed to address this gap by strengthening the structure required to support scalable, transferable growth. Stage 3, succession or exit. This is the stage where business owners begin to consider expansion and future ownership transitions. As the business demonstrates consistent performance, attention shifts towards questions of replication, sustainability, and long-term continuity. At this point, the business is increasingly viewed as an asset. The owner begins to recognize its potential beyond the current model and evaluates their role in the next phase of growth, whether that includes continued involvement, expansion into new markets, or eventual transition. This stage typically emerges beyond the 10-year mark and is centered on long-term sustainability, leadership maturity, and future ownership options. The business owner begins planning for expanded teams and operational capacity while engaging more advanced advisors to support both business and personal financial planning. Conversations around valuation, exit strategies, and transition pathways become more defined, positioning the business for potential sale, transfer, or continued scale. However, only 20 to 30% of businesses that go to market successfully sell. This is often the result of structural readiness not being intentionally developed in earlier stages of growth. Without that foundation, businesses may generate revenue but lack the stability and independence required to transfer ownership effectively. While Stage 3 represents a critical shift towards sustainability, scalability, and future ownership, it is also the stage most commonly rushed or addressed too late. Many business owners arrive here after years of building revenue and operations, only to realize that the underlying structure required to support transition was never intentionally developed. As a result, the business may perform, but it lacks the stability, independence, and maturity necessary to fully function as a transferable asset. This is where the focus on structural development becomes essential. When structure is not built alongside growth, gaps begin to form across leadership, operations, financial visibility, and overall business design. These gaps limit performance, restrict scalability, and reduce the likelihood of a successful transition outcome. The Hidden Enterprise Value Framework exists to address this challenge by bringing intentional structure into the development process earlier and more consistently. It centers on identifying and closing these gaps so that the business is not only operating, but structurally aligned to support long-term value.